My name's Tabitha Espinoza, and I am from Arlee, and I went to school at Arlee all the way through graduation, and then I went to school for my undergrad at the University of Montana, and I got a degree in anthropology. And so after that, kind of tested out lots of different fields, and then came to the conclusion that I wanted to do natural resources, which is sort of what I was interested all along. But I decided to go get my master's degree in environmental studies there. And then right after I finished school, I got to get hired with the Tribes in Natural Resources Department, and I worked in wetlands conservation for a little while, and then now I work in restoration through the Water Compact.
My name is Victoria White, and I went to the Ronan School District, and I actually ended up getting my GED. And before I went to school, I was a stay-at-home mom for 5 years, and I got to be with my kids a lot of the time. And then I decided to go to school for wildlife and fisheries at Salish Kootenai College. I got my degree, and then I got hired for the Tribes, and I work as a restoration technician under the Water Compact. And I also obtained my GIS certification, and I completed my drone pilot license recently.
My name is George McLeod, currently Chief of Field Operations for the Water Measuring and Monitoring Program. We were the Water Management Program, our water resources to start with, in 1982 when I first started. There was a minerals program that Jim Perro and Tom Batridge had started, and then they put in for grants in order to start water resources. And Bill Faust and I were hired in 1982 as hydrographers, and a hydrographer is someone that measures water, stream flows, groundwater. Also very fortunate that I've been involved with snow surveys. Real good part of my job right now. Started doing that in about 1987. And currently we're in charge, our program is in charge of the snow surveys on the reservation and over in the Swan. And we were doing them in the Bob Marshall also.
Ches Chachalt, Casey Ryan, Luis Quest. My name is Casey Ryan, and I am currently a hydrologist with the CSKT Natural Resources Department, and I also serve as the Compact Resource Officer, or Division Manager and Team Lead for the Tribe's Division of Engineering and Water Resources. So I was born and raised in Missoula. I went to college at the University of Montana. I got my undergraduate degree in physical geography in 2012, and was lucky to have a number of really great mentors through my time at the University of Montana. Continued on and got my master's degree in hydrology in 2015. I spent a little bit of time working with the United States Fish and Wildlife Service, but always had my eye on home. And in 2015, I was fortunate in that a position came open with the CSKT, and I applied for it, I accepted it, and I've been working my dream job ever since. So the Tribes have been working on negotiating the compact since the 1980s. This is an effort that goes way back and spans careers of multiple individuals, as well as multiple visionary tribal councils who always kept this objective that they were going to defend the tribe's water rights through a negotiated settlement, through this water compact. And it was a monumental effort. It is to this day the largest Indian water rights settlement that's ever been completed. And it's definitely something to be celebrated. It also represents not an end, but really a beginning of a new chapter in the implementation of that compact. What does it mean? And what are the things that we can do as a result of the passage of this compact? That, I think, is really exciting. The Tribes have a lot to look forward to. There's frankly a lot of work to do, but it's all really exciting work, and it has the opportunity to affect the reservation for generations to come.
So the Tribes won our settlement based on the fact that we were able to prove damages to natural resources. We had done a significant effort to quantify all the damages that the FIP has done to our natural resources. So a big component of the Water Compact implementation is restoration of those resources. So some of the things we're working on now are projects that incorporate fish passage and other fish protection structures. So, for example, some projects are these massive pieces of concrete that are just right in the stream, blocking passage upstream, and then any fish that are trying to move downstream just get taken with most of the water into the irrigation canals. So that's really damaging to our fisheries, and which is our really important natural resource and cultural resource. So some of the projects that were first on the list were fisheries protection projects. So rehabilitating those structures so that fish can continue their migration upstream and then also not get lost to the system by getting stuck in irrigation canals. And then there's all kinds of other projects. We have some projects where we're trying to just reconnect floodplains that have been disconnected because of the FIP infrastructure. We might do habitat restoration work along streams that have been damaged. There's all kinds of lots of erosion issues because of the project.
Yeah, the main reason for us to measure water was to quantify what we have here on the reservation. And in order to keep your water rights, you have to prove that you're actively monitoring and measuring that water and keeping track of it. And so that's what started the Water Resource Program. We began with about maybe 30-some stream gauging sites on the reservation. Bureau of Indian Affairs supplied us with the stream gauging equipment, which consisted of current meters, wading rods, contraption called a bridge crane that is always real popular out at the river honoring. Got to kind of watch people because it's a little dangerous, but it's used to measure a stream flow off of a bridge. So when we first started, that was our main job, Bill and I, was to go out. We were trained by the United States Geological Survey. We had a older gentleman that come over, Ed Blank, that was way up there with the USGS, that spent considerable time with us teaching us how to operate the equipment. Flathead irrigation was also knew how to work some of this equipment. Bill Slack, he was involved in stream gauging also. Techniques were quite a bit different than what would be standard measurement procedures, but there's certain guidelines that we had to follow in our measurements, how we took them, and that was mainly so that they could be court worthy. So whatever information we gathered could be used in court. And Bill and I measured water for about 3 or 4 years, and then we hired a whole bunch of young people to become gauge height checkers. And what we did is they worked 6 days a week, and they'd go out and they'd check all of our stream gauges all around the reservation here. And that was 2 years of kind of craziness, 86 and 87, I believe. And that led to us eventually starting to get recording equipment so that we could keep track of the stream flows all the time. And right now, that's a big part of our job. We need to know, the water compact needs to know what our gauging sites are doing, and they have to be updated, and kept accurate. And we get pressure for that. Everybody wants to make sure that they're up to date, and we're working real hard on it. We're always trying to do that. But so about 87, they implemented in-stream flows. In-stream flows were done by the Fisheries Department. I think maybe Ken Cartier might have worked on it a little bit through surveys of the streams and our discharge measurements. And what that determined was how much water would be needed in the stream to keep the fish and the aquatic vegetation alive. And then as long as we had that in-stream flow amount, say 10 CFS or something like that, then the irrigator, the canal sites could be used. But if it went under that, then they would have to shut down their irrigation and put that water into the stream to meet the in-stream flows. And that became a real big part of our job in 87. And that led to us having to put in recording equipment so we could keep track of it 24 hours a day. And we still do that. We've been doing this since 1987. We know what amount of water is in our streams 24 hours a day. We started out with strip charts. A strip chart would be like a earthquake monitor, but it rises and falls with the stream, with the stage going up and down, and then it does time. And those were a lot of work. You had to manually calculate mean dailies by using a little triangle deal, and you'd, you know, because your water would be going up and down on you, so you'd have to like average it out, and you'd have to fold the darn thing, which took forever. And I wasn't very good at that, so I had a lot of kids doing that. Interesting story on in-stream flows. We had all these kids going out checking gauges, and once we put in our recorders, flathead irrigation didn't know that we had recorders on our streams, and they had a habit of, on the weekends, they would drop it below in-stream flow. You know, and legally they were supposed to keep it at that set flow. They would drop it below, and I asked the ditch writer one time, how come on the weekends you guys are lowering the flows and then on Monday you bring them back up? And he goes, how do you know that? And I took him down to the Jocko River below K Canal. I don't know if you've been up there where they're doing all the work on the K Canal right now. Real big project through the compact. But I took him and I showed him our recorder and our rating table that we built. I'll kind of go back and forth. I just kind of talk that way. Rating tables are what we take measurements for. We take the discharge that we measure. And if you've been out into the streams, have you seen some of them look like yardsticks? Okay, so we have our stilling well that is sensing the rise and fall. But when we first put it in, we have to use levels and shoot in a datum on all that. And we use that yardstick to establish a datum, and that way we can keep track of everything that's going on with our recording equipment. And so we take our measurements and we take our discharge, and you add them together, you have a gauge height with a discharge, and we have a program that you can put that in, and it develops us a rating table. So we put rating tables out in our stream gauging sites that enables a person to look at that, read the gauge height outside or on the instruments inside, look at that strip or the rating table, and it tells you what the discharge is in cubic feet per second. And that's really the main part of our whole thing for measuring flows, is to develop that so other people like irrigation, recreation people, NRCS with their snow surveys, everybody looks at this data to, to make decisions with.
The tribes have a lot of opportunity with the water compact, actually. So we have dramatically expanded our division. The division that I help to manage has gone from 3 programs to, I think we have 9 programs that we have created as a result of this settlement. So that includes irrigation infrastructure. So we have the ability through the settlement to take the Flathead Indian Irrigation Project, which started construction way back in 1910, over 100 years ago. And some of that infrastructure that's out there on the ground is 100 years old. And it is perpetually failing, and it is consistently and perennially damaging the tribal natural resource base. And so as a part of the settlement, we have the opportunity and the funding to try to address some of the aging infrastructure that we have here on the Flathead Indian Irrigation Project, as well as to try to prevent some of those natural resource damages that occur every year as a result of things like failing canals. We also have the opportunity to do a number of different initiatives with the compact, and that includes mitigation, reclamation, and restoration of natural resource damages that have occurred as a result of the construction and the operation of the project. So, for example, if we have areas where the canals and the project have damaged the river, then we have the opportunity and we have the authority to utilize that settlement funding to help restore those damages to the natural environment, which is very exciting.
The FIP irrigation infrastructure there's a lot of components of that. There's structures all throughout the reservation that could be rehabilitated, but we only have a limited amount of money. And so we're trying to undertake as a group a strategic planning process to start to understand, what the world of potential projects are, and then start to think about, what resources are we benefiting when we take on this project versus this project versus this project. So trying to find some way that we can sort of rank all the projects out and really get to the best projects for the use of this tribal money that's going to benefit the tribal natural resources and tribal cultural resources and tribal people and the water, while also, providing for efficient water delivery to the irrigation users. So that's kind of what we're trying to do, is think about all the factors that are all the values that each project represents, and then kind of prioritize the ones that meet the greatest needs, so that we can make sure we're spending tribal money appropriately. So, but we're just at the beginning of that process. We're going to spend, we've been working under the compact for about a year, so we kind of know we've tried a lot and we've learned a lot, and so we're at a good point to start to think about strategic planning and try to get to some sort of document in the second year.
It's difficult to go anywhere on the reservation and find a watershed that hasn't been impacted by the irrigation project. We work in an incredibly complex setting when it comes to water and water management. So as an example, we are working in the footprint of the Flathead Indian Irrigation Project. That's the name of the project here on the reservation. And it's a big one. It's actually the biggest irrigation project in the state of Montana and the largest BIA irrigation project in the nation. So just here on our project, we have 130,000 irrigated acres. We have over 1,000 miles of canals and ditches on the reservation. And that's a lot. That's enough ditch that if you were to put all of those ditches and canals in one line, you could run water to Seattle, Washington, and back, just here on this project. That's incredible. There's also 17 major irrigation reservoirs on the reservation. So we all know Mission Dam and McDonald Dam, for example, but there are 17 of these irrigation reservoirs on the project, 14 major ones like the ones that we think of. And there are also 10,000 individual irrigation structures on the project. So when you think about rehabilitating an irrigation project that was built 100 years ago, it's a big job, but it also comes with lots of opportunity.
Yeah, so at that Lower J project, we want to reconnect the floodplain, which is normally rivers have connection to a large area surrounding them. And in the current state, a lot of our streams are kind of cut down, so the water just really stays in the stream. So if we can build structures that allow water to get back up onto that floodplain, then we can get more plants to grow, native plants to grow. That creates a lot of habitat. It has water quality benefits. The water, especially in the Jocko, the water already is, just by the nature of the Jocko Valley, water really moves between the stream and the groundwater and all the systems next to it, and it's a huge ecological benefit to provide those systems back where they always were, and then in the last 100-some years they've kind of gone by the wayside. So that project's really cool too, because it's just one piece of the puzzle. The tribe's natural resource program has been working for decades on doing restoration along the Jocko River, up and down from there, and so it's one more piece that wildlife can access. They can move, and fish can move through the whole system, and so it kind of connects the pieces.
So we're working on several projects right now. One example may be at the base of the Jocko Canyon. That's the Jocko K Canal Headworks. And anyone who's been there recently will either notice that it is presently in a major state of construction, or by the time you watch this video, it might even be completed. And that's a project that's being done by our employees, by our engineers who work right next door, and that is an opportunity to restore components of the Jocko River floodplain. It's an opportunity to help the irrigation project to be a more efficient project so that they're able to divert the amount of water that we actually need to irrigate crops and not just take every drop of water because it's available. The other thing that we look at as part of all of our projects is we look at the opportunity about how can we improve fisheries habitat on the reservation. Our fisheries are a really important resource traditionally, culturally, and we have bull trout critical habitat here on the reservation, for example. It's federally threatened species, and it's also a species of particular cultural concern to the CSKT. And so we have the opportunity as part of the settlement to try to address issues, irrigation infrastructure on the ground right now that is potentially threatening the bull trout, for example, and trying to find ways to incorporate fish passage, or try to find a way to install fish screens where they didn't exist before, where historically the fish may have just gone down the canal system, and then when the canal got turned off, it's terrible news. Now we have the opportunity and the funding to try to fix problems like that so that we can try to continue to operate the irrigation system, but do it in a way that's much more respectful to the natural resource.
I get excited about my role in the restoration department, not only being able to help implement Tabby's really awesome ideas and having a lady for a boss, which is really awesome, but I get really hopeful for the cultural connections that we're trying to make to the land in our project, and having it emphasize the benefits to the tribe as a whole. And one of my future goals is to host communal harvesting groups. I'm hoping that will help connect people back to the land and help youth connect to the land, and us, I guess, connect to each other as a whole. Also, just be able to be around each other and enjoy what we have and be grateful for what we have.
One of the things Victoria and I talk about is, thinking about restoration is an activity that often takes place because of damages that we as people have created. And so it seems like one element that's kind of foundational to restoration is restoring the kind of right relationship between people and the land. And so building up those kind of projects where people can really engage with the land and engage with each other and see the benefits of how we interact in positive ways with the landscape. It seems like we both feel pretty motivated to have that be a component of our work too, so that we just don't keep doing harms.
Some of the ways that we could connect back culturally is sharing knowledge by updating signage that we have, or just possibly putting in signage that has language on there, Salish and Kootenai, and more scientific maybe information for the area and place names. We've thought about doing that on all of our project sites also. And we have gone and done wetland delineations where we go and we can assess a site and see how wetlands have developed in areas, which is a positive thing because they're spreading and creating better habitats for wildlife and such.
So climate change is a reality here on the reservation, and anyone can go on and look at publicly accessible data for the snow measurement sites in the Mission Mountains, for example, and we're seeing climate change here on the reservation. We're seeing precipitation shift. So we used to see more rain in the fall, and so that has had profound impacts on fire, for example, and the extending of the fire season. The compact doesn't address climate change by name, but what it allows for is adaptive management.
One of the things that I get really excited about is right now we're in the phase of our work where we're just, planning and looking at data and collecting data and doing assessments and sitting through lots of design meetings. And so we're kind of in this heavy planning phase, but I get really excited about imagining 10, 15 years down the line that we get to drive by some of these places, or we get to walk to these places and see that they're completely transformed landscapes, and that's really cool. And that's, I think, one of the really awesome things about restoration as a field is that it's such tangible results, One of the projects that we're working on right now is right where Highway 200 and Highway 93 intersect at River Valley. And so it's really visible. You can just see it when you're driving by the road. And so you look down, and there's this huge old floodplain that's just been converted to agricultural land over the years. And so the river has gotten kind of in size there, and the water is, a lot of it's being routed for irrigation. And so that section of river has been impacted by our human activities for a long time. And so we're going to undertake a project where we're replacing that irrigation structure. But we thought if we're going to be in there moving all this dirt and doing all this work, we might as well plan for the whole floodplain too. So we get to replace that structure so that the fish can pass and we can still get agricultural water out to the people who need it. And then we're also going to try to do a lot of work to reconnect that floodplain and convert the plant community back to more of a native community. And so that's a huge benefit for wildlife, benefit to fisheries, benefit to people, and it's going to be beautiful, and it's cool because it's a really visible project, so everybody who drives the highway is going to be able to see the changes, which is cool.
Yeah, we really have a need for tribal members, young people, to go to college and try to get their degree in hydrology or environmental science, because I think they can get masters now in environmental science, right? So that, and with a little bit of the hydrology, but we're hiring non-members right now because we just don't have any qualified tribal members, and real good quality people, real good to work with. But I really want to see like to see the tribal members become more involved, the youngsters. One of the really fun things, I think I told you earlier, was our snow surveys. And I've seen a lot of changes in that. And I actually worked with Phil Farnes, and Phil Farnes helped develop the snowmobiles, the evolution of the snowmobiles, because people making snowmobiles would give him some to use to go test, because we have to go to the top of the mountains to measure snow. And so I've seen a lot of technology there that's been pretty impressive. And we're actually, we have several sites on the reservation, and we used to have to manually measure them, but now we have them on SnowTel to where we don't have to go measure them, we just have to do maintenance on them. And it's all available out on the web with the NRCS. You can look and see how much snow's up in Sleeping Woman or Moss Peak, or quite a few places, the Jocko, North Fork of the Jocko. But that's a great part of the job, because I get to fly in a helicopter and I get to snowmobile a lot, and I like snowmobiling.
I think we are at a position right now where we are limited only by our imagination. There's so much opportunity in front of the CSKT, and I really enjoy what I'm able to do. It makes it very exciting to come to work. I get the opportunity to work with a number of incredibly talented and dedicated scientists, engineers, and natural resource professionals that are all committed towards the goal of protecting tribal natural resources. I also feel very lucky that we've had generations of visionary leaders who have helped to set that vision and committed the resources to making it a reality for the CSKT. You know, if you're a young person and you're thinking about your career right now, this is such an exciting time. There are so many opportunities with the tribes, as well as that'll be created by the compact. The tribes are going to need generations of scientists and engineers to help make this compact a reality. And we have a lot of professional staff that they're getting close to the age of retirement. And we're going to need people to come in, leaders of the next generation, to come in and take those roles so that they can continue to go on and we can continue to build these programs.